G'day, Tragic here, and welcome to my next painting video. This time we're going to batch paint 3 cultists in one go instead of doing different things, and they're going to be the same color scheme, so it's going to give me a chance to really work on the techniques. I'm going to try and experiment here, and the first thing we're going to do is prime them with the airbrush, and we're doing it this time. I normally use a lacquer-based paint, but I'm actually going to try Vallejo's Surface Primer White. This came with the airbrush I got, and I've been told that the lacquer-based paints have problems sticking to some types of cheaper plastics. It sticks well to Games Workshop miniatures, but it might have an issue sticking to other types of miniatures. So because this is like a cheap board game plastic, I thought I'd try out the Surface Primer and see how that works. If you remember the snake, the last one I had some problem with paint being actually peeling off the model when I was using that blue tack stuff. So with luck, maybe this will sort of help with that issue. I picked up from AK Interactive a set of skin and flesh tones, like a little set of paints called Skin and Flesh Tones. And here I am, I'm just going to base the hands and faces in base flesh. Now, some of you may remember I subscribed to a postal service called Asset Drop, where they send you interesting paints as well as little tutorials on how to use them. Now, in the January Asset Drop, there was a cool little tutorial on how to do yellow, specifically in the example anyway, yellow robes and stuff. It's for like an elder kind of color. But I thought it'd be good to make like a golden yellow robe for these guys. So golden yellow using these paints and these techniques written here. So basically I'm just following the instructions here, and we start off with horse tone bay and golden yellow in a 1-to-1 mix, slightly watered down to create a smooth base coat. Now, it takes many layers for this to become a nice smooth overcoat, but it goes down pretty well actually. I think I enjoy painting with the coat of arms paint a lot more than I am with the game color. The game color is really streaky for me. I mean, I know it's designed to go through the airbrush, but this one was much easier going down, even though it needed multiple layers. Here I'm just giving a second layer to all the skin tones. I actually miss a bunch of skin in this model that I have to paint later on, like way later on when I'm doing the red robes, because I just miss them. It's just hard to see details sometimes when it's all the same color. And I thought their hands were kind of inside their cuffs, you know, like arms folded, but they're actually not. So I have to paint their hands again later on. But what I'm doing here is just basically repainting their hands. And also I mixed up a slightly darker version of the flesh tone to paint all the skulls around the place. Brown is a pretty good base color for skull. Even though it's similar to the color I'm using for the faces, they're going to come out very different because of hopefully the way they get shaded. This is base flesh with a tiny bit of undercoat black put in just to darken it. So after a couple of layers of the skulls, we start to work on the red robes, and this is where this all goes horribly wrong. Oh Lord, this was actually quite depressing. Basically, I thought, well, the yellow's actually turning out really well. I'll use the same techniques, but I'll substitute red colors for the yellow colors. Now, that meant a kind of mid-range dark red mixed with a light red for the base, and then do the shading and everything like I was doing with the yellow. So what I'm doing is I'm mixing in scarlet red with a little bit of gory red just to brighten it up a little bit, so there's somewhere deeper to go with the shadows into scarlet red. Now these are Viaggio Game Air, so I didn't water these down as much as I did with the coat of arm paints, and they were just so streaky. Like, I would paint it, I would let it dry, I would do other stuff, and it just took like layer after layer, maybe like 10 layers to get an even coat, and it just kept getting darker and darker and darker and darker, which I didn't mind. I thought I could lighten it up afterwards. Is that bit where I noticed that all the models had another hand that I completely forgot about. Whoops! So I'm just quickly giving them a quick once over with the skin tone. So the red is just not going down. It's like very, very streaky and having, you know, marks in it. And I try all these different things. I switch to having zero water, so they're completely unthinned, you know, and it just doesn't help. But layer after layer after layer, it starts to smooth out, but it starts getting very, very dark. So what I decided to do is switch over to the yellow robe. Now I'm continuing following the asset drop guide. So I'm using the golden yellow with a 1:2 water ratio and just doing in glazes. So I do a couple of glazes of the yellow, then I do a couple of glazes on the red, you know, so I do all the yellow robes and I do all the red robes, and then by the time I've done the red, the yellow's ready to dry, and by the time I've done the yellow, the red's dry and ready to go. So I just alternate between them, building up highlights in the yellow, and the yellow starts to look really, really good, but the red, even though the smoothness comes out, it's losing all its definition. It's as if I've painted it all black. I try using dark washes, I try painting, you know, highlighting with brighter red, but it makes it really smudgy, and the whole thing is a real disaster, and it's taking me hours and very, very upsetting, to be honest. So what I do is I go get some help from Board Game Geek. There's a painting guild there for miniature painters. It's very, very friendly, and lots of pretty decent guys, like really good painters, or to my eyes anyway. And they gave me some pretty strong advice on how to highlight yellow. And the major advice is this: you highlight yellow, you highlight red, beg your pardon, I'm talking about red here. You highlight red not with lighter shades of red, which was producing those chalky pink marks, but actually with yellow. So you build like a slightly yellowy kind, you mix yellow into the red color and you highlight it that way. But the real trick is apparently you shade red not by adding highlights, but by adding shade, deep, deep, deep shade. And they sent me a lot of really cool information and links to some tutorials and stuff. And this photo here is an example of a master super legend doing what we're talking about. So the plan is to reshade all the recesses really, really dark, use the current red as the main color, and then I'm going to highlight in a very bright golden yellow and the base color red, and then to retint the yellow, because maybe it might be too yellow. If I need to, I will retint the yellow using a red ink or a red glaze of some sort over the yellow on the top. So that is the new plan, and we're going to be doing that in the next video and see if we can salvage these models. I was so frustrated that I actually turned off the camera and did a whole bunch of experimental tests trying to get it done just to make it a much quicker process. So this is what the models look like right now. And as you can see, the yellow's coming along nicely. It obviously needs to still be brightened up. I haven't done the final highlights, or I think I've got a few more layers of the golden yellow to go still. But the red, you can see, is really looking bad. And through my experiments, I did some pretty bad things. Like I found out when you're using washes to darken the shadows, make sure it doesn't pool, because if it turns into sort of pools, it dries as big dots on the model. Not good. But that's only happened on one of them, luckily. Now the model on the right of the screen is the one that I've highlighted in a few light highlights of a lighter yellow mixed in, along with using a dark wash in the middle. And I've actually forgotten what colors I used, because I went through so many different variables when I was trying to figure out how to paint red here. So I can't really tell you exactly what I used. But if you look at the one on the left, you can see the shadows are much better defined. You can really see they look a lot better. But what I'm trying to figure out now is how I can lighten the whole thing to make it brighter, because it's really, really dark red. I haven't really figured that out. So the plan is to do what I was saying, like really paint it very, very, very light and then retint it red using very dark for the shadows. But you can really see, because I keep the one that I've had the yellow highlights done on the left of the screen, as you compare it to the other models, it really does look a lot more defined, which is cool. So I'm kind of moving in the right direction at least. Well, that's it for this video. We're going to try the salvation of the red robe in the next video, and I will see you guys next time.